Here's to whiskey kisses with peaty taste of sin.
So by now you're probably realizing that this video is just that. It's a video and it doesn't have any audio. And yeah, I didn't realize that until after this video had been finished filming. So I'm going to do it all over again. Hi everyone. Welcome back to Drinking Out Loud. I am your host once again, Adam Bradshaw, and it is a pleasure to have you back in my kitchen for another wonderful virtual tasting from the Dram Association. Now, this whole thing is going to feel slightly deja vu because I have just recorded this video and now I'm doing it all over again. But it's going to be quite an interesting experience because instead of getting my unadulterated pure joy at trying these whiskies for the first time, you actually get to witness me trying them for a second time. So I'll have probably a more well-rounded, better informed opinion of these whiskies. But also, I honestly, if anything, I'm looking forward to drinking these whiskies more now after already having a dram than I was in the first place. And I'll see if I can find some funny screenshots of the look on my face as I was opening the bottles for the first time. I was pretty excited. So to say I'm possibly even more excited now is quite a large statement. I love Compass Box. I've loved Compass Box for a long time. Compass Box, I mean, you can tell I love Compass Box because whereas some people have posters of pin-up girls in their rooms when they're a teenager, I didn't. I had a poster of Compass Box. That's not entirely true, but I do have a Compass Box poster right now, as you can see behind me on the wall, which was actually donated to me from Frederica. So you're probably watching Frederica. Thanks for the poster. I really appreciate it. I absolutely love this poster. It usually lives on my staircase, but I've relocated it here for illustrative purposes. So Compass Box, absolutely incredible blending house, created by the Maverick blender John Glaser in the year 2000, who wanted to sort of turn the industry upside down a little, redefine what it meant to be a blended whiskey or a blended malt whiskey, have more creative freedom, and just really put a big middle finger up to some people in the whiskey industry. And I think he's done a damn good job of doing that in the last 20 years. I think Compass Box are one of the biggest reasons that we've seen such a resurgence in high quality blended whiskey and blended malt whiskey. So much so that the big names in blends are actually trying to keep up now. We're seeing things like that Dewar's 27 that I reviewed on one of these videos a few weeks ago. I don't think we would have seen that whiskey if it wasn't for Compass Box really stirring up the pot here. Compass Box, of course, has an absolutely incredible range of core release whiskies, such as the Great King Street Glasgow blend, which I have modelled here on my table. And their core range is very, very good quality whiskey. And actually, to speak volumes of how good quality the whiskey is, it is so highly regarded throughout the industry that people who are in the whiskey industry and who have absolutely nothing to do with Compass Box in a professional capacity still wave the Compass Box flag loud and proud. This bottle here is one of the absolute favourites of the dearly departed friend of mine, Jay Wheelock. He, pretty much every time we'd meet, he'd bring up Compass Box in conversation, and the Glasgow blend specifically was one of his all-time favourite whiskies. And Jay worked with, Highland Park, Macallan, he worked with Fontana for the last few years. He did work with Compass Box for a little while, but not that long in the grand scheme of his, whole whiskey career. So it really obviously took a hold of him, and he couldn't let go of the Compass Box. The Compass Box ideals, the Compass Box flavor profile, the brand. It's just such a fantastic company, especially for those who are just a little bit geeky about their whiskey. This exact bottle actually was given to me, not full, but was given to me by two other people who I have the utmost respect for in the industry here in Canada. And that would be the founders of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society in Canada, Rob and Kelly Carpenter, who, when visiting Victoria, decided to pick up a bottle so that they had some whiskey to drink while they were here. They picked up a bottle of the Glasgow blend, the Great King Street Glasgow blend, and they couldn't finish it in time before they left, so they gave the half a bottle or so to me because they knew it would be a good home, and it had. I think I've treated it well. It's getting down there now, so and it wasn't that long that they were long ago that they were here. So yeah, very highly respected company throughout the whiskey industry, and we're very lucky to have them. But not only do they have an incredible core range of whiskies, which include, by the way, such magnificent whiskies as the Peat Monster, which, if you've not tried Peat Monster, try it. Don't be afraid. It's not actually as monstrous as the name suggests. It calls itself a monster, but it's a wee peaty kitty cat, really. It's a cutie. Brand new releases that are part of the core range, like the Story of the Spaniard, if you like a nice sherry and wine influenced whiskey. Of course, the Hedonism, their very first release, which showcased grain whiskey in a way that I don't think grain whiskey had been showcased ever before. As a blended grain. I think it was the first ever expression of a blended grain whiskey, which is super cool and is now something that several other companies have jumped on board on as well. So real trendsetters in the whiskey industry. Some other favorites of mine, the Oak Cross, fantastic blend as well. Spice Tree, they're all, man, like, I don't think Compass Box has ever let me down. Like, all of their whiskies, even the ones that aren't as strong as others, are still stronger than anything else around them. They're just such an incredible whiskey company. In fact, this poster highlights 10 years of special editions as well. So not only do they have those incredible core range, but they have special editions, some of which are expansions on that core range, some of which are completely new. And yeah, I mean, I've probably had about a quarter of these whiskies, maybe slightly more. Oh man, like, some of the best whiskies I've had in my life are on this poster. Things like the Delilah. Oh, the first Delilah over there, that was absolutely incredible. It was actually designed for the Delilah's bar. Apparently, the legend has it, specifically to go next to a pint of Budweiser. And I had the Delilah 25th, the one down here. I think that's the 25th. I think that's the 25th one. Yeah, the Delilah 25th anniversary one. I had that actually at 1621, our whiskey bar at the clubhouse in the Sticky Wicket, with a pint of Budweiser. And weirdly, Budweiser has never tasted as good as when it is paired with the Delilahs. I mean, who would think of making a whiskey that is a super premium, really cool, geeky whiskey that's designed to go next to a Bud? These guys would, because why the hell not? Incredible whiskies such as the Flaming Heart, This Is Not a Luxury Whiskey, which I had at a Companions of the Quake tasting alongside the 3-year-old Deluxe, which both of them awesome whiskies. The Spice Tree Extravaganza, one of the first ones I had at the Strath. Really, really happy with that one. The Stranger and Stranger, which was actually why this poster was released, a collaboration with the design company Stranger and Stranger that make most, if not all, of Compass Box's labels these days. Of course, the Hedonism, the Muse, one of my all-time favourites. A whiskey that we were lucky enough to be able to get a second case of here in BC that's sold out near instantly when we got it back earlier this year. I actually have half a bottle in the next room, which is one of my prized possessions. It really is. The No Name. Oh man, there's just so many hits from Compass Box. They are incredible. So you all know, if you're a regular viewer, that I like to stretch before I get into the main part of the tasting. And today I'm stretching with something extra special. I'm not actually going to stretch with the Glasgow blend, partially because it's peaty and I don't want to start off with a peated whiskey. But this is just a placeholder, because we've got something super cool that I'm launching at the Strath right now, and that is our very own BC Great King Street edition. This is the Artist Blend, which is from what I remember, the Glasgow blend is, the Glasgow blend, and I think the artist blend is actually designed to be an East Coast expression as opposed to the West Coast expression. So I'm gonna just put this slightly over to the side. Yeah, this blew me away when I first tried it, a few hours ago when I tried to record this video the first time. I was really, really impressed. So the story behind this one, special edition version of the Great King Street Artist Blend, which if you haven't tried the regular version, then, well, you probably should. It's excellent, but this is even more excellent. It's bottled at 49% ABV, which is cool. It's they know their audience. The guys that brought this whiskey into existence know that BC likes it just a little bit stronger. This is a single cask blend in a sense. So it's a single marrying cask, which is something that Compass Box do a lot, of course. So the blend is created and then put in a single cask so that it has some time to mature together and the flavors integrate together. This was cask 195 and produced 198 bottles. And that single cask was a French oak barrel. Super, super cool. There's a little bit of a blurb on the back, actually, I may as well read. The Great King Street range from Compass Box is dedicated to creating contemporary Scotch whiskies in the full-flavoured style of the great 19th century blending houses. So yeah, that's one of the big things that Compass Box like to do is really showcase how good grain can be and let people know that, I mean, in the past, in like the blending houses that mentioned here, they knew that a good blend starts with a really good high quality grain whiskey, and it's not all about finding the cheapest 3 or 4 year old grain whiskey and using that as bulk filler and then adding really strong flavored malts to it to make a blend. No, the grain whiskey is actually an important part of the blending process. If you want to create such a beautiful blended whiskey as these guys do, you have to pick really good grain. The grain is important, and it's delicious, as we saw with the blended grains that they do. So where did I get to? In creating these blends, we drew on archived recipes from the golden age of whiskey making, then updated them with our own 21st century custom cask maturation techniques. The result is a style of blended Scotch unlike anything else available today. This unique bottling has been created especially from a single marrying cask used to mature the whiskey after an initial blending has taken place. Such secondary maturation, a process used for every Great King Street whiskey, used to be commonplace within the world of Scotch, but has become a lost art over the past 100 years. Full details of the specific marrying cask used to mature this whiskey and the flavours they have imparted on the finished whiskey can be found on the front of this bottle. This lovely big red sticker here. Where did I get to? Front of this bottle. We hope you find this information enlightening. Drink the single marrying cask bottling any way you like, and above all, share and enjoy. So yeah, it does have some details which I've already said most of, but it does have the dates as well. So it was married on it's got the marriage date. It married on the 11th of June 2018 and bottled on the 7th of October 2019. If it was married when it was put in the cask together, when it's taken out of the cask, is that his divorce date, I guess? That's a bit dark, isn't it? Don't know why my brain went there. Anyway, yeah. Compass Box likes to give you information. They like to give you more information than they're legally supposed to. That's kind of got them in trouble a few times. But they believe in utmost clarity in whiskey. If it was up to them, they would put the exact ingredients and makeup of the whiskey on the bottle. Unfortunately, they're not allowed. They are, however, allowed to tell you if you ask. So, is anyone getting there? So by now I'm hoping that someone has asked in the comments section. And if no one else has, at the very least, I'm hoping that James Bourne has. James, I just want to say thank you for bringing Compass Box whiskies to British Columbia. We absolutely, yeah, I mean, we love Compass Box here as well, you know, but we are incredibly grateful for the work that you do to bring some of our favourite whiskies into this province. For those of you who don't know James and are meeting him right now in the live chat, say hi. He doesn't bite. Hopefully he'll stick around for the Zoom meeting afterwards so you can put a face to the name. But James is an incredibly well educated, knowledgeable guy when it comes to not just whiskey, but all kinds of alcoholic beverages. He knows a hell of a lot more about wine than I do, I'm sure of that. But yeah, he's a font of knowledge and an incredible person to be doing business with here in BC. So yeah, thanks for... I'm assuming that this was your idea, this BC exclusive single marrying cask. I'm not sure, but I'm going to give you credit anyway because I don't know who else to give it to. And yeah, I'm gonna give this one a second try. You might have noticed I'm going with the absolutely adorable wee Glencairn glasses today because, well, I don't want to drink too much. I have already had these once. So, beauty. Still sounds just as good the second time. Lovely. So yes, by now, someone, even if it was James, will have asked me, so what is the recipe? What are the ingredients of this blend? What can you tell us about it? Well, I can tell you quite a lot, actually. I can tell you that 46% of this blend, which is the biggest component, the largest component, is the grain whiskey. And that's not because they're finding the cheapest grain whiskey that they can find to use as filler. Like I said, that's not Compass Box's thing. They like to showcase great grain whiskey. And in this case, the great grain whiskey they've chosen is probably, I'm going to go out there and say it's probably the most expensive component. It's an 11-year-old Richard Bourbon Barrel Cameron Brig. Fantastic grain distillery. I've had quite a few single grains from them from different independent bottlings. And yeah, I mean, a great base spirit to base a blended whiskey on. Absolutely. Then 30% of this is one of my favourite distilleries of all time, Clynelish. This is a 6-year-old Richard Bourbon Barrel Clynelish. Clynelish is a fantastic ingredient for blends because one of the reasons I love it as a single malt is it always has this waxy, sort of honeycomb characteristic to it, not just in flavour but in mouthfeel. And that adds a lot of volume and depth to a blended whiskey. Then after that, they've got the Highland Malt blend, a 9-year-old version of that, which the Highland Malt blend is something that goes into quite a lot of Compass Box recipes, and it's actually the spice tree recipe, really. So it's Clynelish, Dalyuen and Teaninich done in a custom toasted French oak barrel. There's 16% of that going into this blend. And then finally, the last 8% is a 5-year-old Linkwood from a first fill sherry butt. And for those of you who are familiar with some of the ridiculous young sherried whiskies we've had recently, they can be absolutely incredible, but they can have some rough edges, which makes them perfect for blending because blending is where you can use the other ingredients to sand off those rough edges. So this 5-year-old Linkwood has been included in this blend because they can make it even better than it was as a single malt. And that's the whole purpose of blending, is that you can make something that's greater than the sum of its parts. And this whiskey, I mean, I haven't obviously tried its parts exactly, but I have an idea of what they would be like. And this whiskey is absolutely astounding. So yeah, I'm getting the same kind of spice and citrus peel that I got on the nose the first time around. It's honeyed, it's little grassy, little grainy. Lovely little herbs and spice, grassy grain. That's kind of the wheelhouse we're in right now on the nose. Having it at 49% really helps. As much as I love the traditional original artist blend, this is really a touch above. That's lovely. Something that BC can be proud to call our own. Yeah, the Kleinlich really does make this thicker feeling. I mean, grain whiskey, one of the things that, one of the issues it can often bring to a blend is kind of a little bit of a thinness to it. Grain whiskey, whilst when it's an older whiskey, it doesn't usually have this problem. But at a younger, like preteen age, like this is 11, it can often come across a little bit sort of thin feeling on the mouth, which I don't mind too much because it tastes usually pretty damn good still. But it can be a little detrimental to the mouthfeel experience of a blend. So the Kleinlich is a perfect thing to balance that out because it just brings it up and makes it feel a little bit more full and voluminous. Yeah, big fan of this guy. So this one is launching right this second at strathliquor.com. And as ever with these videos, I'm still surprised I've not been told off for doing this because it doesn't actually make much sense to be launching whiskies at a special price, but that's one thing that the Dram Association is all about, right? We want to introduce whiskies. We want to give you a shot at not only getting it, but rewarding people for being proactive by giving them a discount right off the bat. So we're not giving this discount because we think that it's going to be hard to sell. We're giving the discount because we want to reward those who are on top of, or staying on top, keeping on top of the whiskey scene here in BC. So this is normally $102.96. You can get it right now for $90.35 at strathliquor.com. $90.35, so less than $100 pre-tax. Quite a lot less than $100 pre-tax. It's only just over $100 after tax. That's a fantastic deal for something that is so limited and unique. Like I said, this is 198 bottles in existence, all of them available in BC, only available in this province. If you've got friends and family, maybe back out east or maybe in Scotland or anywhere else in the world who you know are Compass Box fans, pick them up a bottle of this and keep hold of it until you next see them, until Christmas or the next time you visit home, because this is something that they're not going to be able to get back home. This is specific to our market, and I think they've done a bloody good job with it. I'm really super happy with this whiskey. And it's a great price. It really is. For something that is 49%, for something that is so unique and limited edition, they've done good. They've done really good. Slancher. All right. So moving on now, we have a very special release. A very special release which I was excited about, like I said, before I tried them. I was excited because, I mean, it's Compass Box, and like I said, they've never really let me down. I was excited because it's a really ambitious theme for a series of whiskies. This is a trilogy with a really geeky theme. But I was also excited because a lot of people got to try this at various festivals earlier this year. And I didn't manage to do that. But a lot of people are really, really excited to finally get their hands on this whiskey. And I'm really excited to try it again because it was awesome doing it the first time. And I'm really sorry that I had the technical mishap that means that you don't get to witness the full glory of me trying these for the first time. But believe me, my face did things that my face should probably not do on camera. It was enlightening. It was glorious. And yeah, let's clear some room for these whiskies. It's a really good warm-up dram. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, so this is a series of whiskies called, you've probably guessed it by now, the Myths and Legends series. That's right. The Myths and Legends, a series of whiskey that Compass Box have designed to try and debunk some myths and cement themselves as legends, even more so in the whiskey industry. And there's a lot of myths in whiskey. There's so many, and it's the job of people like Compass Box or presenters like myself to try and debunk as many of those myths as we can. But we're all human, and we all fall for misinformation. Um, we fall for people's received wisdom, and it's unfortunate because there are a lot of people out there with a lot of information about whiskey, and sometimes you'll get information from one person and information from another person that completely contradicts each other. So Compass Box have taken it upon themselves to be a authority, a vocal authority on whiskey, and debunk some of these myths. And we're going to start with number one because, I mean, it makes sense to start with number one. This is Compass Box Myths and Legends 1. Now, isn't that stunning? Yes, the answer is yes, it is stunning. And I'm a particular fan of the design of these because this might horrify some of you whiskey collectors out there, but I don't keep the boxes. And they, in this edition, have made a perfectly pleasant box, but a box that is entirely designed to showcase how beautiful the bottle is. So I don't mind at all going, oh, recycling bin. There you go. Take this out. Yep, goodbye. This is absolutely stunning. Compass Box has, I have a poster of Compass Box artwork. Compass Box have always paid special attention to presentation. Not because, it's not the whole don't judge a book by its cover thing, but they want to do justice to the whiskey they're making by presenting it in the right manner. If you don't get, if you're at an awards ceremony receiving a prestigious award for services to whatever industry you're in, you don't turn up in a tracksuit. You turn up in a tuxedo, and that is what Compass Box is doing. They're putting their best foot forward and dressing for the occasion. And what's more, they are getting in-depth and geeky with their artwork in this one. They do this several times, but this one in particular, it feels like I'm trying to decode the lyrics to a Pink Floyd album going through this series. It really does. I love it. So, Myths and Legends number 1. I'm going to read a bit of the back of the label because this will explain what myth they are debunking with this first one. I've got hiccups. That's slightly awkward on camera. I'll just try and run with it. It'll be fine. Myths and Legends. Scotch whisky has a rich array of stories, myths and legends. However, what start as myths can become received wisdom, influencing our understanding and restricting our enjoyment. We've chosen to scrutinise 3 misleading beliefs concerning Scotch in this series that we call Myths and Legends. Myths and Legends 1 highlights how blending furthers our understanding of distillery character. 2 parcels of malt whisky from the same Northern Highland distillery tasted markedly different. The younger parcel was malty and citrusy. The older one, much creamier with ripe fruit character. Each parcel revealed only one facet of the distillery's personality. By combining them, we have created a whisky full of fragrance with a more rounded complexity. The designation of single malt is almost incidental to us. Myths and Legends 1 is all about the blend. So the myth that they are really debunking here is to do with single malts. Everyone seems to have this idea that single malt is somehow better than a blend because it's a single malt. When truth be told, 9 times out of 10 when you're getting a single malt whiskey, especially in official distillery bottling, you're still getting a blend. You're just getting a blend which is being heavily restricted by only being able to use whiskey from a single distillery. Single malt, single distillery, that's what it means. That doesn't make it necessarily any better than another whiskey that is also 100% malt but from more than one distillery. Makes no sense to me that single malts have that specific quality sort of assumption. I'm not saying that single malts shouldn't be prestigious, I think the story and the idea behind single malts is still very important. It's really nice to be able to go for have a whiskey and know that you're going to enjoy that style because you like Glenfarclas. You've had Glenfarclas 12, you've had Glenfarclas 15. The likelihood of you enjoying Glenfarclas 21, therefore, is pretty likely, right? Distilleries have specific characters that they aim for, but the truth is, a distillery's individual spirit can vary wildly. And as a presenter for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, where we release 7 new whiskies every single month, often from distilleries that we're quite familiar with, I well and truly know that you can get whiskey that was distilled at a distillery that tastes nothing like the official bottlings from that distillery. It happens all the time in the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, all the time. In fact, just last week I released a Dalmore that tasted nothing like a Dalmore that I've had that had the word Dalmore on it. And it's better than any Dalmore I've ever had, to be perfectly honest. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Sometimes you might not personally gel with the flavor profile that a distillery has chosen for their house style, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you dislike that distillery's spirit all of the time. With a single cask release or with a blend that showcases a different aspect of that distillery's character, you may find yourself falling in love with an unlikely bedfellow. In my case, Dalmore. Who knew? This really does take that concept and make a beautiful piece of art out of it. I mean, actually, speaking of art, I should mention, decoding the artwork. This is not just a pretty picture. This is actually showing the concept that they're debunking in the image. This is 2 characters quite similar. You can see the tree coming up from behind the woman's head there, mimicking the antlers of the deer over here. And the idea is that this is displaying the 2 different aspects of the distillery's character meeting in one. Like we said, we've got the younger, which I'm assuming is the smaller the deer. We've got the older, the wiser whiskey. The younger, which was more malty and citrusy. The older one, much creamier with a ripe fruit character. And as you can see, like it feels like that is being depicted in this image. Like the creamier is like she's holding a big sort of cream-colored weighted blanket. The deer, if you look, has actually got more of a like tropical fruit branches coming out of its antlers there as well. It's got these golden leaves on it, which is giving this sort of idea of this lighter, more citrusy thing. It's just a really cool artistic experiment and concept piece. Like I said, it feels like a Pink Floyd album, but it's awesome. It really is. So the information on the back of the label doesn't end there. Yes, it mentioned that this is a Highland distillery, but it goes one step beyond and actually then says, both parcels of malt whiskey from the Balblair distillery. It just straight up outs itself as being from Balblair, something that you don't generally see blenders do. They don't usually say right there on the bottle what whiskey is in it. Sometimes they'll say what some of the whiskey that's in it. In this case, this, yes, whilst it's definitely a blend, whilst it's still Compass Box doing what they do best, it happenstantially happens to be a single malt because the 2 parcels of whiskey that were combined to create a cohesive unit in this happen to be from the same distillery. And that distillery is Balblair, a distillery which I really enjoy Balblair. It's one that I haven't managed to explore as much as I like, simply because for whatever reason, I just haven't had the opportunity to try that many Balblairs. And it's something that I'm looking forward to exploring more in the future, especially after having this whiskey, because I frankly love it. I already know that I love it. I'm hoping that I love it just as much the second time as the first. I'm really looking forward to pouring myself a glass of it again. But yeah, it's really, really neat. It also then tells us the exact casks and the percentage of the bottle that those casks make up. So 57.9% of this bottle is first fill bourbon barrels. 42.1% is recharred American oak barrels. It then says the lead whiskey makers on this project was Jill Boyd and James Saxton. Tells us the colour is natural. Tells us the filtration is a light 5-micron filter, no chill filtration. So not only does it say no chill filtration, it goes into the extra detail of telling us how light the filter was in the barrier filtration. Bottled in July 2019. And it also says on the neck tag here how many bottles were made. 4,394. That's all that were ever made in existence across the entire globe. And from what I understand, most territories have already sold out of this whiskey. It is a curse and a blessing here in BC that we're often the last people to get special editions. It means we have to wait longer, but it also means that we have a better idea of how good the whiskey is, because by the time we get it, there's been 1,001 reviews already, and I'm just throwing another one on the pile with this video, to be honest. There's probably a plethora of information about these whiskies that you could have already seen, but I don't know, most of you guys watching this already know me, so it feels like we're just hanging out, eh? Okay, so let's crack myself a glass of this. You might be thinking, well, we know most of the information, but there's something you're not telling us, Adam. There's something that wasn't written on the back of this bottle because it's legally not allowed to be. Well, I'm not allowed to tell you unless you ask. Hint, hint. Thank you for asking. Yes, so 2 parcels of Blair. The first fill bourbon barrels happen to be from 1997, and the recharred American oak barrels are from 2003. And to me, that is actually another myth in the whiskey industry, which happenstantially Compass Box is pretty much... all 3 of these whiskies go to debunk that myth, and Compass Box is pretty much always debunking this myth, and that is that non-age statement whiskies are by definition trash. There's so many people who drag the non-age statement whiskey thing through the mud, and say that if you don't say how old the whiskey is, then you don't know how good it is. Of course you bloody do. Taste the fucking thing. If you have to rely on a number to know how good a whiskey is, well, you just don't have enough confidence in your own palate, do you? That age is just a number, and that number can do certain things, but at the same time, yes, there are certain flavours that come from older and younger whiskies, but those flavours work well together. And that is what Compass Box does here. So if we've got 1997, so that would make it approximately, 22 years old, if this was bottled in 2019, somewhere around there. And then blended with 2003, which is only, 15, 16 years old. There's half a decade between those ages, but that half a decade is one of the big reasons that these 2 parcels of whiskey tasted so different. Older and younger whiskey, for blending purposes, go hand in hand. They bring different flavors to the table. It's all about the balance of spirit to wood. The longer it's in the cask, the more that balance shifts towards the wood. And sometimes you want to keep those spirit flavors, and especially when you're going to be blending, you can, again, as I was mentioning earlier with why they throw a 5-year-old linkwood into the artist blend, when blending, you can shave off those rough edges that might have appeared on a younger whiskey and just retain the amazing flavors that you were looking for and want to retain from the spirit. The Scotch Whisky Association says that the only age you're legally allowed to put in this bottle is the age of the youngest component. So if this whiskey was to have a big age statement on the front, a big number on the front, so we could all go, oh, look, I'm important, I'm drinking a 22-year-old whiskey, they wouldn't be allowed to say it's 22-year-old. They'd only be allowed to say that it is around 15 or 16, depending on what month of 2003 that younger parcel was distilled in. That's a travesty, because 57.9 of this is half a decade older. But they're more than half a decade older. But they're not allowed to put the age of that older parcel on there, despite it being the larger component. And that is batshit crazy. So just because a whiskey is non-age statement does not mean that they're trying to play a trick on you. They're not always trying, it happens, but they're not always trying to just trick you into buying young, immature whiskey with a quirky label on it. That happens, and often it's reflected in the price. I feel it's very rare that distilleries put out a super young, immature tasting whiskey and try and label it as a super premium product. When distilleries do that, they're generally quite honest about it. Look at Highland Park, look at the Magnus. It's immature tasting, it's young. It's good though, I like it. It's also only $50 bloody bucks. That's, it's why. a lot of the time when you get a non-age statement whiskey that is significantly more expensive, they're not just trying to trick you. Like Lefroy Glore is my perfect example for this. I don't think that Lefroy Glore is a 5-year-old Lefroy that they're tricking you into paying $200 for. God, no. I honestly believe that Lefroy Glore has some much, much older malt in there. I'd say there's a certain... if I was to guess, I'd say there's a certain percentage of Lefroy Glore that is around the 20 years old mark, and another percentage that is single digit. Probably 8 or 9, and they've blended those two things together to create a really harmonious, interesting Lefroy, where you're getting the flavors of the mature, older Islay malts and mixing it, Islay, I don't know why I said Islay, Islay malts, and mixing it with the much more raw, medicinal, classic Lefroy flavors that you're used to if you're normally drinking the quarter cask, which is a young whiskey, or the 10-year-old, right? Anyway, off topic. I'm going to drink something. Yeah, it's. I think the flavor that I first went to last time was what's it called? The Scottish cream dessert with the berries in it and the oats. Cranachan. It's like Cranachan. It's got this beautiful toasted grain thing going on, almost like a toasted whole wheat bagel with this big rich, not overly sweet but big rich creaminess. Nice vanilla notes. Yes, that's a lovely expression. So Balblair, really cool distillery. It was formerly owned by Hiram Walker, so there's a really good Canadian connection there. Apparently one of the best distilleries to visit while you're in Scotland. I've had lots of Dram Association members tell me that I should add it to my itinerary next time I'm in Scotland. But for those of us who... actually, there's quite a few of us. I know there's at least, I think, six either individuals or couples from the Dram Association who were planning on visiting Scotland this year. Seems unlikely that any of us are going to be doing that. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm one of them. I was supposed to be there in June. We're probably not going to be doing any tours of Balblair, but doesn't mean we can't visit there in spirit, because, well, we can drink some, but also you can get a good sense of the distillery by watching an incredible movie called The Angel Share. If you've not seen The Angel Share, oh my god, watch The Angel Share. The best way I can sell it is think of a Scottish version of Full Monty, where instead of stripping, they are stealing whiskey. It's awesome. Watch The Angel Share. Yeah, that is gorgeous. There's a creamy lemon curd thing going on there. It really does taste almost breakfasty in a sense, with those rich sort of grain honey notes. Yeah. Really, really nice and cereal forward. There is quite a nice lifting citrus note in there. Like I said, lemon curd when I first started. It's kind of going more towards a marmalade thing to stick with the breakfast theme. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I am not disappointed to be trying this again. Actually, if I ever really, really like a whiskey that I'm doing in a video, I might just pretend to not record the audio just so I can redo the video and drink it again, because frankly, I'm enjoying this, possibly even more than I was the first time, because I knew a little bit more on what to expect. Oh yeah. Yeah, that is... It's morning. This is a morning whiskey. It's not just the breakfast. It's bright, but it's heavy. It's like it feels like a sunrise. It feels like you're in a field of dry grass in the middle of summer, and for whatever reason you're up before the sun rises and you sat there and it's a little bit cold in the air, and then you get this big golden glow on the horizon and it starts to warm you up. That's what this whiskey feels like. It does. It feels like it warms you up on the inside with the spice notes as well. Yeah, this is a sunrise whiskey. Now I'm going to keep the bottle on the table as we get the next one, because this beautiful artwork is just one part of a trilogy of beautiful artwork. So, part 2, ladies and gentlemen. Again, created by Jill Boyd and James Saxon. This one has 4,564, which I think is, yeah, it's about 150 or so more. So, for those of you who are trying to collect the full set, some are going to be utterly disappointed because more of this one was made. So, there are going to be some people who get some of this and don't manage to get some of this. All right, into the recycling you go. Number 2. Now, what can we tell you about number 2? Well, as much as I could tell you a bit about it, I think the official words from John Glaser can do it better justice. So, Myths and Legends Part 2 blends together malt whiskies of different ages from a single Speyside distillery. So again, a single malt. Something I didn't even mention because it's so happenstantial that this happens to be a single malt whiskey. I don't think Compass Box have done one before. I've certainly never had a single malt from Compass Box. It might be a first. There may have possibly been a limited edition single malt that they did early on. Like I said, Compass Box started in the year 2000. In the year 2000, I was 12, so I was definitely not drinking the early Compass Boxes at the time, and it's pretty hard to find the early Compass Boxes now. But I'm assuming that this is probably the first single malt. I'm sure James could probably correct me or confirm me in the live chat. Actually, I said that exact spiel the first time I did this video, and I forgot to go on Google and find out. Oh well. So, see, I had the benefit of doing a second take, and I didn't even use it to my advantage. Never mind. In addition to the aromas of tropical fruits and butterscotch, you will also discover subtle savoury notes and spiciness. This distinctive carrier has nothing to do with Speyside. Process decisions made at the distillery, the effects of maturation, and our own choices regarding the final blend are the most significant factors. Clues to a whiskey's flavour lie within the glass, not the distillery's region. And that is something that I have been preaching for years now. Regions are bollocks. They don't mean really anything anymore. And specifically, like, you don't expect a Speyside to taste like a Speyside just because it was made in Speyside. There are certain whiskies that will have that classic Speyside characteristic, but it's not because of where it's made geographically. It's because of the decisions that were made in that area and that happened to be more popular in that area at a time when a lot of distilleries were creating their whiskies. Same with Islay, right? I mean, Islay, it makes sense that a lot of it is still peated because at the time when peated whiskey was fading away, it's because of the train lines that were being built to Speyside. And you can't really build a train to Islay. Doesn't work so well because there's, a big thing of water there. So they continue to use peat as their drying source for the barley. So it's happenstantial. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're on Islay today. There's peated whiskey made in every single region of Scotland now. Campbellton peated whiskey, of course there is. Glen Scotia and Springbank both make peated whiskey. Highland peated whiskey, well, I could probably name a dozen. Speyside peated whiskey, of course there is. There's at least half a dozen Speyside distilleries that make peated whiskey. The islands, of course. Talisker, Highland Park, peated whiskey. Even the lowlands have peated whiskey now with Ailsa Bay. So even the most distinctive geographical feature of a whiskey means nothing. Literally nothing anymore. In fact, in the last last week, I had a whiskey that was made in England that tasted like Lefroy. Yeah. Meaningless. Where it's made has very, very little meaning, unless it's made in a particularly hot country. Like within Scotland, it has very little meaning. It may be matured at a different elevation, which will change the maturation. Of course, there's little tiny things that will affect the whiskey in small ways, but that's not the defining part of the flavor of the whiskey. How you change the flavor of the whiskey is in three parts. It is the distillation process, it is the fermentation process, and it is the maturation process. And then once the whiskey is made, how it's presented can then change the whiskey as well, because you can blend it to create different flavors, to highlight different flavors and hide other flavors. So none of those have anything to do with the geography of where the distillery happened to be. There will be certain flavors, like I said, climate will come into effect for some of the maturation, but a lot of the whiskey that's made isn't even matured where it's distilled. A lot of Islay whiskey is shipped off to the mainland in giant tankers and matured in a warehouse near Glasgow. So, anyway, what I'm saying here is I agree, Compass Box. It's bollocks. You'll have heard me say that when I was talking about a Big Pete a few episodes ago on here as well, and how I absolutely love the remarkable regional malts from Douglas Lang, because, part of their marketing is that, the regions have these specific flavors, which I think is bollocks, but I like it because what they're actually doing is recreating those assumed flavors from the different regions using only whiskey from that region, which I think is kind of cool. It both goes against what I'm trying to teach people about, but also is a really good example of how how you can how the regions do have a lot of history and assumptions behind them, which you can still make whiskey that tastes like that from. But I still think I would love Douglas Lang to really do a 180 on that series and create a mainland Big Pete, a Big Pete that tastes like it's from Islay, that uses no Islay whiskey. I think that'd be cool because it's doable, right? You could do a Ruard Moor and a Glen Scotia blend and make it taste like it's from Islay easily. It'd be pretty cool. Anyway, all right, let's get a glass and let's pour some whiskey. So the extra details on here is what I'm going to pour myself some whiskey before I go into extra details. Priorities, Adam, priorities. It's a relatively quiet quart pop. I'm going to do that again. That was a little unsatisfying. There we go. That's the sound I'm after. So, all parcels of malt whiskey from Glen Elgin Distillery. Yep. This is Glen Elgin. Really cool. And the image that you see on here reflects the idea that region is not that important. You can see a landscape in the background, pushed to the background because it's not at the forefront. It's not the key thing. You can see the woman here. She's taken off the mask to reveal her true face. The region is the mask, right? It's just a mask. It doesn't actually have any meaning. You'll see the beautiful tropical plants growing up around the label, which is signifying the tropical fruit flavors that you actually get from this distillate. And you'll see a big golden spiral curling around, a copper-coloured spiral, and that is representing the worm tubs that they use at Glen Elgin. Worm tubs being a form of the condenser, a cooler at the end of the still to cool the liquid down. A very traditional thing. I believe the worm tub actually stems from in the really olden days before they had, plumbing everywhere in Scotland and running water, and before they had access to more, cooling technology. They used to just use really thin copper pipes and run them actually out of the distillery into the burn or the stream, the river that was their water source next to the distillery, and use the natural cold water outside to cool the whiskey down and then pipe it back into the distillery again, which is absolutely genius. And that extended copper contact will change the flavour of the whiskey, change the character of the whiskey. In this case, with Glen Elgin and with several other distilleries that use the worm tubs, it will make it a bigger, richer, meatier spirit with heavy tropical fruit flavours. Man, I love those heavy tropical fruit. Tropical flute. I did that last time as well. I don't know what a tropical flute is. I don't know if you can join an orchestra playing the tropical flute, but I really want to say it instead of tropical fruit for some reason. Yeah, definitely tropical fruit. You can't hide it. Pineapples and papayas and feijoa. It smells like feijoa, which is a fruit that I have no idea the origins of, but it's really, really popular in New Zealand. You get feijoa juice. You can get feijoa juice at every bar. There's cocktails made with feijoa juice. I've literally never seen it outside of New Zealand. It's probably really popular in like other Pacific nations. It's probably like a Filipino thing, maybe. It's probably popular there under a different name. It must be popular somewhere else because it's mass juiced and put into cartons and widely available everywhere in New Zealand. It's not like a small craft farmers market thing. It's bloody everywhere. So there must be somewhere else that drinks enough because New Zealand is not a big enough country to warrant that kind of mass production. So I'm guessing some other Asian nation probably enjoys feijoa as much as the Kiwis do. Kiwi actually has. No, I'm not getting kiwi. That's a step too far. The power of suggestion doesn't work that strongly. But yeah, lots of nice tropical fruit flavors on the nose, or aromas on the nose rather. Ah, that's gorgeous. There is a sugary sweetness as well, almost like the tropical fruit has got like a caramel sauce drizzled on top, like a big thick salty caramel sauce. And those aromas really do play through on the palate. But just the same as I did last time, um, I'm getting a slight um, touch more bite to it than the tropical fruit flavors give on their own. It's got that pineapple thing. It really is pineapple, but it almost reminds me less of actual pineapple, like less of fresh pineapple and more of pineapple shrub. And I don't mean like a plant, not that kind of shrub. I mean shrub as like a drinking vinegar. So a soft vinegar mixed with soda water that's really refreshing. If you've never had a shrub, you do yourself a favor and get some shrub. There's a fantastic local producer of shrubs actually called the Shrubbery. You should check them out. They make if drinking vinegar sounds like a good thing to you, you'd probably enjoy it. I love it. But yeah, not at all the kind of vinegar that you would use in a salad dressing. It's not that strong, potent. It's much more. I mean, you add water to it anyway, but it's much more approachable. Pleasant to drink kind of flavor. But yeah, it's got that nice. It's almost got a metallic thing on the palate as well. Yeah, metallic's a good word. Metallic's a good phrase for it. So this is Glenelgan, and it will actually give you some breakdown of the casks, but I have a much more in-depth breakdown. But if only someone would ask me what that breakdown was. Yeah, by now, surely someone in the live chat has taken that bait. So this is a mixture of 5 different Glenelgan parcels. First of all, from the year 2000, recharred American oak barrels, and that makes 78% of this blend. So they really found a really good high quality Glenelgan that they've used as a base, and then used other Glenelgan parcels to sort of change that base and mold it into the shape that they wanted. So 2001 is the next parcel. 8% of it is a 2001 refilled bourbon hogshead parcel. 8% of it is from 2002, a recharred American oak hogshead. 3% of it is a 1996 refill sherry butt, which is, I can't begin to imagine how expensive an actual full sherry butt of 1996 Glenelgan is. That's a cool thing to put in a blend. And another 3% of it is a recharred American oak barrel, again from 1996. So just like with the edition 1 with those Bal Blairs, we are seeing both younger and older whiskies coming together in a harmonious mixture to create a beautiful, complex whiskey. So yeah, I mean, I've mentioned the worm tub. I've mentioned kind of flavors you get from Glenelgan. The worm tub isn't the only traditional thing they do. They're kind of a little bit old school. They still have wooden washbacks. And they've not, they've always been a little bit backwards and a little bit old school. They were actually the last distillery in Scotland to install electricity. They didn't install electricity at Glenelgan Distillery until 1950. Yeah, a little behind the times there, guys. You should keep up with the trends a little more. Okay, so the final whiskey. It's time for Myths and Legends number 3. So the idea behind number 3 is all about this idea that some whiskies are too good to blend. Well, bollocks. There is no whiskey on earth, I believe, that couldn't be made even better under the hands of a skilled blending master. There are some whiskies that are probably too risky to try that with, and I will definitely agree with that. If you've got a whiskey that is top tier, one of the best in the world, scoring a 97, 98 points, it's probably not worth taking the risk of trying to make it even better by blending. But just because a distillery is a big name, well-known manufacturer doesn't mean that you can't actually make it even better, right? So the image on this one has a minotaur on it, and this minotaur has managed to escape the confines of its labyrinth and come out into the sunshine, into the light. It is surrounded by these tropical fruits that we got from Myths and Legends 2. It has a bit of smoke in the background, and that is because this is basically Myths and Legends 2 with some really highly regarded prominent distilleries blended into it. So, back of the bottle says, Myths and Legends 3, we have taken some of the same parcels of malt whiskey used in Myths and Legends 2 and added peated malt whiskies from a pair of celebrated island distilleries. Thanks to them, 2's flavour of tropical fruits and butterscotch are now further enriched by a deep, enchantingly aromatic peat profile. Never blend the famous names. The breadth of complex flavours in Myths and Legends 2 dismantles such superstitious thinking. So yes, of course, we've got Glenelgan. In fact, we have 8.2% of the bourbon hogsheads. We've got just a little bit as well, 8% of the Recharred American Oak hogsheads. And then again, that year 2000 Recharred American Oak barrel that was the cornerstone of number 2 is again the cornerstone of this one with a massive 67.8%. But then they've done the unthinkable. They've added 9.5% 1996 Highland Park. That's cool. Highland Park, really, really well-known, great distillery. But then also, and this is the real kicker for me, a 2004 refill sherry butt Kalila. 6.5% of this whiskey is a refill sherry butt 2004 Kalila, and oh my god, sherry butt Kalila is one of my favorite things on this planet. And, that just goes to show that nothing is too sacred. Just because something is absolutely incredible doesn't mean that it can't be experimented with and be played with and be made even better. And this, as much as I love, teenage sherry butt Kalilas, I love this whiskey more. They have done an incredible job at taking that same beautiful tropical fruit, caramel whiskey that was in Myths and Legends 2 and adding just those little bites of peat from 2 prestigious distilleries to make a really beautiful, cohesive whiskey. Again, James Saxon had his name on this one, but this is also, he paired up with John Glazer this time, the founder of Compass Box. 4,446 bottles of this one made it into production. And yeah, once again, bottled in July 2019. Just stunning. Just stunning. And I'm really looking forward to revisiting this. This one feels the most like Compass Box. This feels like it's more, familiar. It's more Compass Box style in that they've got more colours to paint with. I often make that analogy. I often say that one of the reasons I love blended malts is because with a single malt, you're only working with a couple of tones. You're only working with a subset of flavours that distillery can produce. But with a blended malt, it is a multicolour, technicolor masterpiece that you can paint. Every colour under the sun is yours to experiment with. And this is just that little bit more colourful than whiskey number 2. This whiskey number 2 is, don't get me wrong, absolutely fantastic. I love it. It's a little bit more restricted in terms of the variety of flavors that you're getting out of it, though. This has just let the leash off, let the reins out, and just really upped the game a little bit more with the addition of the Highland Park and the Caol Ila. Yeah, it's got that quintessential thing that I always get from Caol Ila of these cured smoked pork products. It's bacon, it's pancetta. And that's something I don't always get it from Caol Ila, but I often get it from Caol Ila. And Caol Ila is one of those distilleries that I honestly think is the most consistent distillery, not just in Islay, but probably in the whole country. I've never had a subpar Caol Ila. I've never had a Caol Ila that is anything less than, I want to say good. It's honestly, I don't think I've ever had a Caol Ila that's anything less than great. They're always a distillery that performs above a certain level. I've had some incredible Caol Ilas, but truth be told, I've never had a Caol Ila that has absolutely blown my mind. I always make the comparison here, Caol Ila and Lagavulin, because it's so easy to compare them. They get their malt from exactly the same place at exactly the same specs, different maturation sort of stages, different distillation techniques, but relatively similar products. I find that Lagavulin is a little bit more, some Lagavulins are really good, some underperform, I feel. I feel like Lagavulin can be worse than Caol Ila, but Lagavulin can also be better than Caol Ila, but Caol Ila is much more stable. I've definitely, if I was to rate the best Caol Ila I've had and the best Lagavulin I've had, the Lagavulin wins. It does. Like, the Lagavulin can be so absolutely incredible. But at the same time, the worst Caol Ila I've had blows the worst Lagavulin I've had completely out of the water. Highland Park, of course, cult favourite. If you've not had a Highland Park single malt, you've probably been living under a rock because they're everywhere. They're a very prominent distillery these days, which is strange because historically they've only actually been doing single malt for a few decades. They're not one of the historically well-known distilleries. They've been making malt for a very, very long time, but almost all of it went to the blends back in the days. I think it was around the late 80s, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. I think it was around then when the Highland Park really came out on its own. But these days, they're really, really pushed as a single malt. They seem to come up with about 4 dozen different expressions every year, most of them with a crazy Norse god name or some kind of Norse symbol. There's so many expressions. I think right now, if I remember correctly, last time I looked at the inventory at the warehouse here in BC, I think we have about 16 different Highland Parks available to us this second, official bottling Highland Parks. That's more than any other distillery I can think of. And that ranges from like the standard, the incredible 12-year-old, all the way up to some of their, quite frankly, bonkers priced, like Fire and Ice, or the Dark and the Light. They're a funny distillery in terms of they never quite seem to be sure where to price themselves. The classic 12 is an absolute bargain, but then you add 5 years and you put it in a fancy looking bottle, and all of a sudden it's 7 times the price. I don't understand it. But yeah, Highland Park, it's one of those distilleries that's put on a pedestal. But I know Highland Park has a lot of fans, and I'm probably going to, hopefully I'm not going to offend anyone by saying this, apart from maybe Highland Park. But I might ruffle some feathers by saying that I personally find myself drawn to blends that contain Highland Park more than I find myself drawn to just Highland Park. And I'm talking about, like, the Magnus is the perfect example. I was mentioning earlier, Magnus is like $50. It's a young Highland Park malt. It's fine. It's worth the price. It's good. It's not trying to be anything that it's not, and I respect that about the Magnus. It's not a $200 non-aged statement. It's a $50 non-aged statement. And yes, it's young, but it's $50. So who cares? But for exactly the same price, you can get the Naked Grouse, which contains Highland Park, but also contains Macallan, and also, I believe, contains Glenrothes, and I think is at least twice as good as the Magnus. So yeah, I have a long history of seemingly preferring blends with Highland Park in it over Highland Park on its own, even though Highland Park is one of the most sought-after, prestigious distilleries in the world. And this is no exception. I can't think of a Highland Park in the same price range as this Myths and Legends 3 that I would personally buy over this whiskey. Speaking of price range, I should probably tell you the price of these whiskies. Now, I haven't mentioned it until now because I'm doing something a little different with these guys. So you might remember about 2 weeks ago, we released the Athru Trilogy, the Billy Walker Irish Trilogy. And I've been getting a little bit of feedback from people who were late to watching the video, who wanted to get the whole trilogy, but now aren't able to because we have like 3 bottles of one bottle of another, and no bottles of the last one. So I'm actually going to give preference to people who want to buy the entire set first and foremost, because I want to support that, especially with the Myths and Legends series, because this is a journey, this is a concept album. This is something that I believe is best experienced as the full set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up on the web store the full set at one single price for all 3 bottles, and then if there's any left in a couple of weeks, then I'll break it up into single bottles and people can choose just one of them if they wish. Also, we don't have much of this. There is a slim chance that we might be able to get more. I'm not sure where the other... I know it was originally on allocation, but of course then COVID hit and a lot of stores aren't able to take their allocation. So there is a possibility maybe that we could get more bottles of the Myths and Legends. So if we do sell out, which I'm honestly kind of expecting that we will tonight, right after this video, if we do sell out, shoot me an email. And if we get enough interest, I might be able to persuade our owners, even though, you know, we're obviously hurting for money right now, being that it's the middle of an outbreak and we're a downtown store and no one's downtown. Even though we have some restrictions on what we can bring into the store right now, I will try and put the case forward to bring in a second case of this if we get even just a couple of people who want another set. So yes, for those of you who are itching to click the purchase button, and I know there's a couple of you. This is again being put onto an introductory sale because I'm feeling generous. I always do it. Normally, this would be $951.90 for the entire trilogy, so just over $300 each. Right now, you can get over $110 off of that price. You can get this for $838 even, $838 for all 3 of them, ready to go as a pre-made trilogy, and you can get that online right now. There we have it. So, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate all of you joining in for this launch of some incredible Compass Box whiskies. Like I mentioned, we do actually have an open to the public Zoom sort of post tasting, I guess, virtual pub going on after this one, just so that people can say hi, not just to me, but also to James Bourne, who is responsible for bringing these whiskies into BC and knows a hell of a lot more about Compass Box than I do, to be frank. So if you have any questions about Compass Box in general, click the link that I put in the live chat right now if you're watching this at the premiere to hop across to Zoom and say hi to me and James in person, and we'll sit back and relax and tell some Compass Box story. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you all for joining in. It's been an honour and a pleasure to do this tasting, not once, but twice. Yeah. I'm never going to make that mistake again, I'll tell you that. Yeah, the mute button is something that I will just not press ever again. So coming up in Drinking Out Loud, we've got some really fun things happening. We're going to be celebrating the Fejil Isla Molten Music Festival here digitally. We're going to have some peaty Isla themed tastings and some not peaty Isla themed tastings coming up. We're going to be looking at the distillates that's put out by Bruichladdich, and by popular demand after I put it to a vote to Dram Association members, we're also going to be featuring some Bunnahabhain malts in another video. So look out for Bruichladdich and Bunnahabhain coming soon. We're also going to be talking a little bit about Bowmore. So all the the bee distilleries. We're going to be exploring them all. Of course, we'll have another SNWS outturn coming up shortly, and we're also going to be doing a very special Drams for Fams tasting here, where we're going to be raising some money for the local food banks. This is our big charity drive that we get involved with, started by the guys over in Alberta. And this one is actually being done through the Rare Drams company, who import some incredible whiskies here, including the Carnmore series, including the Old Perth series, and including, of course, the Douglas Langs here in BC. And we're going to be raising some money with the help of Rare Drams. So I'm guessing it's the Rare Drams for Fams Association tasting. I guess that's what we're going to have to call it to incorporate all three things. The Rare Drams for Fams Association will be happening quite soon as well, where we have a very special charity release, and we're going to do a little bit of a auction, hopefully, as well. I'm still looking into the legality of doing an auction on one of these videos, but hopefully we're going to do a charity auction for something very special too. So thanks for joining in. See some of you on Zoom in a couple of minutes. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you guys down the line. Slán Sivar.
Here's to whiskey kisses with the peachy taste of scent.